Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am Jessica and I'll be your host today, and I'm really excited. It's been a while since we've had a Syosset Stories guest who is a notable alum according to the Syosset Wikipedia page. And you are notable because I got really excited when I saw who you were and also what you've worked on. So we did get quite excited about that. You graduated a year before me. You have worked on so many awesome things. According to the Syosset High School yearbook called Passing the Torch, I am going to pass the mic to you, and please introduce yourself and tell us about who you are and your career.
Hi, my name is Jordan Young. I am a television writer and producer, and I've worked on a bunch of stuff. I actually started as an animator, and my first job was on The Simpsons back in 1999. From there, I developed a show with a couple of really great creative guys, Dave Jesser and Matt Silverstein, called Drawn Together. That was my first writing opportunity, and from there I have been lucky enough to keep working on a bunch of shows.
So I have to ask, because of all the people who I have interviewed who are Syosset alum, aside from Kathleen Kim, who is a Muppeteer, yes, how did you get into animation?
It was always my childhood passion, honestly. Like, I never imagined I would be a writer. I loved comedy. I loved drawing, but I was relatively shy and didn't really think about the idea of like performing or anything. But I went to school of visual arts after high school, and just kind of took every single job I could get, and was lucky enough to meet a guy who thought I had enough talent to take a test, which I did. Take a test, not have talent, and I got the job, and I dropped out of college, like all successful Syosset alumni, and moved to California. Worked on The Simpsons seasons, I want to say 9 through 12, which at that point I was like, well, how much longer is this thing going to go? And
you had no idea, did you?
No, I honestly, we thought the show was going to get canceled any day, every single year. We were like, well, this has got to be the last one, right? And then while I was doing that, and I did love it, but kind of realized that the thing I loved about The Simpsons was the comedy of it, not the way the characters looked. And decided, well, why don't I give this writing thing a shot? So people said to me, well, why do you think you can write? Like, look at all these people who do this for a living. They all went to Harvard and they all did this and they're all brilliant. And I said, yeah, I'm not saying I could be them, but I could be the mediocre version of them. And those seem to be out there. And that was it. And then I just kind of went door to door, random people, anyone I knew who was in the writing field or knew a writer, I would talk to, and I would just say, what do I need to do? How do I need to do this? And then I met Silverstein and Jesser, and they had an idea for an animated show, an animated reality TV show. And we clicked pretty quickly, at least comedically. And I said, well, how about this deal? I'll do all the art for the pitch. I'll do all the art for the pilot, for free, but if the show goes, you got to hire me as a writer. And they were like, sure, why not? As I learned much later in the business, the odds of that happening were pretty low. So I got very lucky, and I worked with them, and we did Drawn Together for 3 years, 3 seasons. And from there to It's Always Sunny, and then I don't want to read my whole IMDb page, but other things.
So wait a second. So you are the person who essentially designed Princess Clara and Foxy
Yeah.
and oh
Wildor, Sockbat,
yes,
Captain
and first of all,
Hero.
I will say that I definitely quote that show way more than I should.
It is. I at the time loved the show. I'm so happy to have worked on it and been a part of it. It is shocking to me in 2024 what we were able to get away with, and the things we did. Like, they are crazy by definition, things that I would never to this day be like putting on TV. But I love that it exists. It's a wild show, and we had a really great time making it. The cast was the most wonderful.
So good.
Yeah, just the best of basically the best voice actors out there, the most prolific, but they had never had a chance to really do an adult themed show. Like, they so for them, Cree Summers, Tara Strong, Jess Harnell, these people, they work constantly, but mostly in kids stuff. So giving them an opportunity to flex their comedy chops was really great, and a real blast for us as creatives and for them. So it was really just kind of a magical 3 seasons that probably could never happen again.
So I have to ask because as a fan of the voice cast as well, and as somebody who is familiar with Kids Next Door, have you heard the theory that Foxy used to be number 5 from Kids Next Door? And is there any
uh
truth to that?
I can say there is no truth to that. But I love that there is a world in which that could be possible in a universe. But we developed Foxy very specifically in the kind of Josie and the Pussycats sort of Hanna-Barbera style. All the characters being in the world of animation, which I was, obsessed with growing up, and to this day still am. It was great to do kind of a thing like, hey, what is our take on a SpongeBob? What is our take on a superhero? What is our take on a Disney princess? And that was both artistically fun and also like comedically the best, to be able to take shots at kind of the childhood archetypes that I had loved so much.
And it was a perfect time period because that was, I think, when you had things like the Surreal Life coming out and
Yeah.
just all of these bizarre reality shows that, it's like, let's get like not even a D-list celebrity, let's get an E-list celebrity with a bunch of other E-list celebrities and film them with manufactured drama. And it was, I think that you all captured that very, very well, because as a fan of animation myself, I always kind of wondered what would happen if, all of my favorite animated characters lived in a house together. I mean, come on.
Yeah, no, it was a thing that the two creators, they were big Brother fans, like massive Big Brother fans, and um it was and animation fans. So it was really them going like, this would just be such a fun thing to do. And it was organic, and it was not like cynically proposed. It was like, this would be fun, right? And everyone agreed, including myself and Comedy Central at the time. And it was really, it was bizarre, because also when we would have our premiere parties as fans of Big Brother, we would invite the cast of those reality shows. They didn't get invited to a lot of stuff, so they would all come, and then it was super weird because they stayed the whole time, and you're like, they didn't have any connection to the show other than it was kind of inspired by them. But it was funny to see what people will do for free food and booze, I guess.
Of course. Which brings me to, so we will talk about Syosset stuff shortly, but I just,
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit about your episode of Bojack was the most perfect episode of that entire show. And that's
Nice.
kind of hard to say because that is another show, I think, that it almost shares something with just the idea of the real life behind these stars, but this just happens to be an anthropomorphic horse, and his friend who is human, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a complicated backstory for Todd, but
Yeah.
uh, it, Raphael Bob Waxberg is the creator, is one of the rare true geniuses, and I came onto the show second season. I had watched the first season and thought, "Wow, this is amazing," because as a fan of animation, there had been a lot of like usage of animation for really out there, bold comedy, but not really dramatic stuff. No one had really taken that shot. And he instinctively, having not really worked in animation before, just had this vision for what he wanted to do. And when we met with him, I said, look, I've never, I always thought animation was for fun. Like, it was a great way to tell stories. And there was always, every animated movie, especially in Disney, starts with a bit of a drama, right? And a lot of times a death. But in TV, that had never been attempted. And I just said, this, and be perfectly honest, before Bojack, I don't know that I would have considered myself, even having done a lot of writing, a writer who loved to write. I was like, I'm lucky, and I still feel this way. I feel lucky to be able to do this anytime anyone hires me. But that was the first time I was like, oh, we're writing stuff. We're actually going to be emotional here. We're going to actually challenge the audience to watch an animated show and get sad. And that was really interesting to me, and kind of opened up a whole new door of creativity where suddenly I could foresee animation being not just for the hard jokes, which I still love, and Bojack is not short on jokes. But that episode, in particular, I got very lucky because Raphael trusted me and my animation background to write that one, because he was a little nervous. I'm sure, by the way, he would have knocked it out of the park had he written it entirely himself. But I think just the way to describe everything visually, it fit very well into my wheelhouse. And so, we did this thing that we didn't know would work. We kind of hoped it would work. And he was very confident. And then when we saw it come together and what the artists had done, and it just was like, whoa, it really did work. It was great. It was very satisfying to have that be kind of my name on this episode of television that really meant so much to so many people. It was very cool.
And it won an award, did it not?
It did not. It was nominated for an award, and it's okay. No, it's a very funny story. We were nominated for a WGA award, and simultaneously that same year, another episode, I forget the title of the episode, is written by a wonderful guy named Joe Lawson, who had been nominated for his episode of Bojack, but also an episode of This Is Us that he wrote. And so he wasn't sitting with us at the Bojack table. We were there, and we were very prepared to lose to The Simpsons, which had been traditional for most shows and not something I would have been upset by. But we were sitting there, and all of a sudden they call Bojack Horseman, and then they award it to Joe Lawson, who was not prepared to win it because he felt, and not to be overly braggy, but we did think if any Bojack episode would win, it would have been us, and it wasn't. And then we were very happy. Joe was so drunk because he was not prepared to win, and he was very gracious in his speech. But many of the periodicals and the kind of business papers like Variety and Hollywood Reporter, I guess, assumed we would have won too because they announced it, and so we got inundated with text messages congratulating us, and then I had to answer them by saying, I really appreciate that, but no, we didn't win. but we were happy that our friend won, and that is still true to this day. Also, I would have been terrified having to give an award speech. So I'm happy that he got to do it, and I got to have my name in the Hollywood Reporter falsely for winning.
Well, it really was a wonderful episode, and I think when you're talking about just sort of the animation background, one of the things that I really loved about it is that it has, while BoJack is very different from other types of animated shows, and it is very like in that way it's so groundbreaking, because I think to this day that is still one of the best series that addresses mental health. I really have never ever seen anything just address something in such a poignant way and also be about an anthropomorphic horse.
It helped, I think, soften some of the edges of what we were saying, but also allow us to say it, because I think if we were saying this is an actor from Hollywood, it might feel like we were taking shots at someone when we weren't. We were really trying to kind of expose what this world can be like, and what it is to kind of suffer with the guilt of decisions and addiction and all sorts of internal angst.
But one of the things about that particular episode was that in a way it had that quality that those old Warner Brothers cartoons where there was no dialogue, but there was a lot of stuff going on, and you heard the orchestra playing. I mean, I don't know if they play these anymore. I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons. I am very happy that there are now many networks dedicated to cartoons and you can watch them all the time. But back in the day, there was a very short period of time during the week when you knew you could watch cartoons was Saturday morning, and they would have the old Looney Tunes on or the Silly Symphonies, and it would just be like orchestra music and animation, and it told a really good story. And this managed to capture sort of how I used to feel watching those, but in a very, very different way. And I think about it a lot.
Well, I am glad. Anytime anything I have ever done has a positive impact on a person, I am pleased. I, was honestly so backdoor into the writing that every time I get to do it, it feels like a real treat. And the fact that people are emotionally resonant with what I have put out there feels awesome. And as a huge animation fan as well, that is a very high compliment to be even in the same sentence as something like the Merry Melodies and Silly Symphonies, where this was the highest of art forms to be aspired to. At that time, there wasn't an animation industry. They were basically it, and they just were pure storytellers, and I think for us, looking at Charlie Chaplin and even stuff like Fantasia, we really wanted to pull that off. I don't know that we were so confident that we could, but it was the sort of thing that I remember Netflix was really nervous about. And we're really like, can we put a little dialogue in? And Raphael, to his immense credit, was steadfast and said, no, there will not be dialogue. That is the whole thing of the show, this whole episode. And when they saw the first cut, they wrote an apology, which is not common in network to creative interactions. So having them apologize and say, we were wrong, this is a beautiful episode, was incredibly satisfying.
So how did you make the jump then to non-animated writing?
So working on Drawing Together, I took a meeting, second season of It's Always Sunny. It had not really been the show that it became. But I loved it. I was a real fan right away. Just really loved the dynamic between Rob, Glenn, and Charlie, and then Danny coming in second season was flawless, and Caitlin was amazing as well. So I met with them and we hit it off. And they were fans of animation, so we were kind of geeking out a little bit about that. And at the end of the meeting, my manager at the time was like, they loved you, but they really want to hire teams. So I was working on Drawn Together with a very talented and very smart writer named Elijah Aaron. And we had kind of started developing ideas together. I think he was using me for my artistic skills, and I was using him for his giant Harvard brain. But I knew that if we went in as a team, we had a really good shot. So we did, and we pitched them an episode or two, and they were happy, and they were like, sure, come on in. So we took that job, worked with them, and then that was, another surreal thing to be working with such brilliant comedic minds, but also at a time when the world had yet to really embrace the show. So it was kind of great to be there. It's very like Steve Jobs, Wozniak in a garage vibes, like they knew they were making something great, but the world hadn't discovered it quite at the same level. And then once you do that, you're kind of given at least the thumbs up from the rest of the industry that you can write for real people. I mean, it feels crazy, right? It's not like a person who writes for an animated person couldn't then write for a real person. It was bizarre, but there was that feeling. And I think it still kind of persists a little bit to this day. But I don't care. I actually prefer writing for animation anyway. So,
Well, I want to pivot just a little bit and ask you just about Syosset. So you graduated in 1996.
yeah,
Were you doing any of the entertainment stuff, like the radio station, or did you
no,
take the TV production class?
nope.
Whoa.
I did take one. I don't know what the class was called, but I made a clay animation short film with a friend of mine who's actually a writer in Hollywood, as well as an author, as well as uh, a good friend. And we made this short animated clay thing. That was the extent of any kind. I cannot stress this enough. I had no idea how TV worked. I had no idea how writing worked. I knew I wanted to be an animator, and I knew I could draw pretty well. So I focused everything on getting into an art school. And then as soon as I did that, I focused everything on getting internships and any jobs anyone would let me do. And then as soon as I got the animation job and started to understand, I realized, oh, what I had fallen in love with was animation as storytelling device. I hadn't realized that at the time. And because in Syosset, and I don't know if it's different these days, I'm sure a little bit it is, but you're so separate from what Hollywood is and how it works and functions that, short of having some friends who did movie stuff, but I didn't know what they just disappeared and came back and were in a movie. Like I didn't know how that worked. So I got, like I said, very lucky to have these opportunities, and when they were presented, to be aggressive enough to always not let go when they were within reach.
So did you have any particular teachers you want to shout out to, or
Oh
any like
man,
memories, specific ones?
I wish I did. My friends do make fun of me. I don't keep in touch with a ton of people from Syosset. I Gabe Rotter, I was referencing before, is a wonderful guy. He is one of my closest friends, and we've known each other since we were 10. Scott Tisdale is probably the only other person I talk to, and both of them make fun of me because I don't remember much of high school, not because of drug use, but because I think I was a very focused kid and wanted out of high school, not like Syosset in particular, just wanted to get my life started. So I think a lot of it was kind of just me swimming as fast as I could to get to the open mouth of the stream. I remember there were some wonderful teachers. I wish I could remember all their names, but I can't. But they were wonderful, and you know, I do think that the people who also inadvertently nurtured my creative side on the writing side without me knowing that that's where I wanted to go, were incredibly helpful. I mean, I always loved books and reading. I still do. And I think it's just funny that for some reason, I just never thought that was a thing you could do for a living. So I didn't. But I think all those things were super important towards giving me the skills that I then was able to take out and turn into a silly career.
It's so funny because we actually do hear that answer more often than not, in general. And I think there is, I think, important to kind of note that there is sort of also a camp of people who are kind of, I don't know, like high school is kind of romanticized, especially, I mean, even when it's not being romanticized, it kind of is. Like the Breakfast Club, I don't know, like everybody was miserable, it was horrible, but at the same time, you still, what was that line in Futurama? I wish I was old enough to feel ways about stuff, it was just,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think people might have, and I'd be curious, I never asked this because again, I'm not particularly in touch with anyone, but I think people might have assumed I had a good time in high school. And in that way, and I think this is maybe another reason why Bojack spoke to me, I was very deeply unhappy. Like I was not connected in a way that I was prepared to accept. I think like I was I needed to get outside of that high school world to figure out who I was really. Um, and all those experiences were formative and helpful, but I definitely wasn't loving the 92 to 96 years of this life.
Yeah, you were there. What was it? You were there smack in the middle of when we lost Kurt Cobain. I remember that day very well in high school.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was sad. That was a tough one. That was a tough one. And it's also so funny to bridge kind of uh, you know, uh, not just decades, but centuries, and to be like millennia, and to be like, whoa, now talking to young writers that I work with or meet, and they're like, I was born in 1991. I'm like, how is that? I can't, my brain has such a hard time wrapping around that.
Oh,
But
me too. I'm like, that's not a thing that should be allowed.
no, and I'll talk to like people and I'll be like, referencing something like Seinfeld, and these kids look at me like, what is that? And I have to be like, oh, let me explain about a faraway time where there are TV shows that people all watched at the same time and shared experiences with.
So kind of getting back to it, are you working on anything particularly cool that you'd like to talk about now that you're allowed to talk about?
So there is something where I'm very excited about, not particularly allowed to talk about it, save the fact that it is a Netflix show and it is with Raphael Bob Waxberg, the creator of Bojack Horseman. And I am so excited to be working with him again. I think this particular show is going to be really special. And I look forward to being able to tell more people about it. It currently doesn't have a title, so I couldn't tell you what it was titled anyway. But it will probably be announced in September. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Just I guess I was the showrunner for Crapopolis for season one. So if you liked season one, I appreciate it. If you like season two, I care less because I quit. But I definitely am proud of those first 13 episodes that you could probably find streaming somewhere.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time and chatting with us. It really always means a lot just to kind of see what people are doing. And we are really really, I think like, just lucky in general to be able to have these connections. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Oh, it's my
Yeah, great.
pleasure. Really fun to talk to you. And I think if I can take anything away, it is that, if there are people that are young and have a desire to do this thing that feels crazy, I owe it to them to help either discourage them so that they know, because it is an insane industry, but also to offer a little bit of knowledge and any help, because I got very lucky every single step of my career where I needed guidance to find people who are willing to give it. And I feel like that was the kind of pay it forward mentality that I need to embrace and look to. So if you're a Syosset high school student and you love this podcast and you also want to get into the world of animation or the world of writing, contact Jessica, and I'm sure she can contact me and we'll figure it out from there.
That's really generous of you. Jordan Young, thank you so much for chatting with us.
My pleasure.
My pleasure too. And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.